Oh, hey, Julie. Sorry, I didn't see you over there. Hey, hey, Paul. Thank you for coming. All right, are we recording now?
Soon, this thing can hurry up. Yeah. Oh. There you go.
All right. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Economic Development Committee will be conducted by remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found at the Town of Southborough's website at www.southborough.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southborough.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance or members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio, video recording, transcript, other comprehensive record proceeding as soon as possible after the meeting. So I'm going to call the Economic Development Committee meeting of December 10th, 2020, 7:30 to order at 7:35. Thank you, everybody, for being there, and I apologize I was a couple seconds late. I am going to move things around a little bit since we have Mr. Sibeli here, and I don't want to take up too much of his time. I'm going to start with the tax increment financing discussion and get the assessor's opinion. So in a nutshell, Paul, last week we talked, our last meeting, we talked a little bit about TIFs and how the other towns around us are doing them. And we talked a little bit about the pros and cons. And I figured the best person to reach out to get an opinion on is the town's assessor. So thank you for being here tonight.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on the TIF? Do you agree with them, disagree with them, think they're functional? Just you see how empty we've got, what, a 23% vacancy rate right now on Route 9 already. And moving forward, we're thinking it's going to get worse after COVID's over with everybody shrinking their footprints. So we're trying to think outside of the box and say we're open, Southborough's open for business, how we can get people in. So
my thoughts on TIFs. I mean, once the selectman during a classification meeting, one of my first ones basically said, I thought he put it best is we don't believe in, he didn't believe in split tax rates. But on the flip side of that, he did not believe in TIFs that we should be giving out any deals. I kind of adopt that same type of thing for a single rate town. However, having said that, I think you still have to be flexible and consider TIFs under the certain circumstances. I think they can be an effective tool. And what I'm thinking mostly is if you had somebody, a very large, somebody who wanted to put a large building up or a campus style, say on the EMC property, that's kind of what I would focus in on. I think it could be a very good tool for a town, even with just a single tax rate. I always thought that they were prevalent mostly in split rate towns with huge split rates. Did a little calling around today and yesterday just to kind of get an idea. And I was actually surprised. Framingham has 5. I would have expected them to have a lot more. They have an enormous split rate. And, I looked and Westboro has 5. Westboro's a single rate town. Hopkinton has 2. Northborough had 1, just came out of it. So it's really, if a town is really aggressive and has large areas such as we do with the EMC property, I certainly think it could be a tool to help attract people. The market is very hot to try to get people because of the conditions right now, the economic conditions, office space, things of that nature, high vacancy rates. A lot of towns are looking at trying to get these parcels that are just sitting and trying to get them developed. So I think it is a tool that you definitely have to think about.
So I wasn't even thinking like all brand new construction such an EMC. I'm thinking if somebody wanted to come and renovate the CAS building, because I don't know if you've been to that lately, but that needs some sweat equity, definitely on the outside and probably the inside, and buildings like that. So if somebody wanted to come and invest, $5 or $10 million into a building to make it an A space, even that, it might not be huge because you're only offering the TIF on the value added as Rob put on
Correct.
it. So it's not a huge
Correct.
TIF, but at least it's some site. It says, hey, we want business on Route 9. We're willing to work with you. That was my thought anyway.
Again, I don't think there's one right answer for it. It's really, I think it's going to be driven by you guys and the selectmen on how you want to approach it, how aggressive you are, moving forward to attract people. I think that's really it is. There's no right or wrong answer on this. It's really, it's definitely a viable tool. I'm not a big fan of just, every project that comes down the pike from here on in, handing them out.
Well, I think
An idea of, some type of ground rules and a strategy, really.
now
It's certainly a viable option.
doesn't it have to meet state criteria to even be offered a TIF?
Yeah, let's, I'll be honest with you. I don't know a ton about it because we've never had them. This is one of those things you have in class 20 years ago and you're trying to brush up last minute on it.
Yeah.
So if we have additional questions, I certainly can reach out to my colleagues.
Yeah, Paul,
So really what it's tied to is employment. You're
hey,
trying to
One second, Chris.
bring job creation to the area. And really, that's what it's tied to. It's not you just handing them out to anybody.
Right.
You have to meet certain criteria. And from what I understand, it goes to the local level and then gets approved at the state level, from what it was explained to me.
yeah,
So the state has to approve every project, whether or not it's just a local only TIF or something that requires the state to give something. And Paul, you make a very good point. It has to be project specific. A lot of the projects that actually get approved in the surrounding communities have the state incentives that come along as well, which are the ITC, the investment tax credit. And if you do it kind of a local only TIF, that kind of puts all of the burden on the local community. So, if the Board of Selectmen want to allow this tool to be out there and marketing, I think one of the things that has to be discussed and determined is whether or not they would also be eligible for state incentives, or whether or not we would even want to consider what's termed a TIF only. So that's a discussion maybe for the selectmen to have. But if it's a tool that we can use, especially when we're in competition against our neighbors with 5 in Framingham and 5 in Westboro, maybe we want to say, yes, we will participate, but everything has to be run through the Board of Selectmen before we bring it to town meeting for approval.
yeah. Can I jump in, John?
Yes, please.
First of all, Paul, it's great to have you with us. You've always been a champion of the EDC and the tax rates when it comes up in November. We cannot thank you enough because you have a unique insight on what's happening out there. And so that gives the Board of Selectmen in the town a level of confidence on what we're trying to accomplish and the necessity of this. One thing that I always found out, and Rob, you are so articulate about this topic, is it's always been perceived in my experience that the TIF is just a giveaway to business. And that's a misconception because most people, including when this came up with a board meeting several years ago, people would say, we're not giving any money away to business and we're not going to do it. And I think those decisions were made because they didn't have the knowledge, Rob, that you have, and understanding that this is not a giveaway. And you, in our discussion last week, you had a very thorough explanation of how it works as an investment. But we always get that money back. And I'm wondering if you could just focus on that piece for a moment and give Paul some insight about that, that would, and all of us again.
Yeah, sure. Paul, I probably ought to have prefaced my statement. I used to work for the state's Office of Business Development, where I was the Metro West Regional Director and kind of administered the EDIP program, which included the TIF. So I'm a bit of a ringer on this.
So this is right up your alley.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So
That's what we need.
yeah. So the one thing that always makes people feel a little bit more comfortable is at no point in time is it giving away value. The incentive is based upon the incremental increase. And
Exactly.
so every TIF that could be structured is just on that incremental increase so we can be competitive to get them here. And that as a result of the investment, when the TIF ends, somewhere between 5 and 20 years, 5 to 100%. At the end of that TIF, we have a much higher assessed property. And there are communities like Acton that did a 20-year TIF for Insulet. There are also some communities that only did 5. So it's one of those things where when people feel comfortable and allow it to be a tool in the toolbox, and it's something that we can bring to those people doing the EMC site or something like the CAS, it kind of puts us on a little bit more even footing with some of our competitors. And I think that's kind of what the hope is. And that if we finally got a TIF project here, we'd have the opportunity to have people feel comfortable with that decision.
Yeah.
Chris, did that kind of summarize a little bit what you were looking for?
Yeah, I think it's great. And we have to continue to explain that, because when we go forward with it, that part of that explanation brings great value to the whole effort that Paul is trying to optimize our tax situation as others are. And I think they'll have confidence with this better understanding. It makes a big difference with your background, Rob.
Yeah, Rob, I still think there's a lot of, I'm sure you all agree, there's a lot of opportunity in Southborough, especially with the industrial park. We have a lot of under-improved properties in Southborough. CAS is kind of a good example of a building that's just been sitting there and just staler and staler on the market. They can't, I've talked to the owner and they just can't seem to get anything going with that building. Well, that doesn't do us any good in the long run. And Rob, you're exactly right. It's an investment. And that's what you're looking to do is attract these people and get the dollars out of these properties that we're not getting. And as you all know, the businesses, that's the biggest moneymaker for the town. It's the least strain on our, on our expense to the town. It really is. So that's what I love about the work of your group. And the selectmen seem to be getting a little more aggressive or a little more involved in trying to put together something to, maximize tax dollars out of these properties. And I think it's a good thing. I just hope we can get the, building and zoning on board and try to improve some of the zoning like you're doing downtown, also to make it more attractive.
Paul, if I can, is you have an enormous insight in the sense that you're out meeting with these owners of the buildings. You've gone in these buildings. And one of the things the EDC is trying to do is reach out to those owners and talk about what this TIF can do. But having you and your understanding, I know you know some of these people very well, and perhaps as we go forward outside of this meeting, we could sit down with you and talk about who are the best owners or property holders that you think we could talk to, you think would be very receptive to responding to ways in which we can fill these spaces, but also to use resources like the TIF. That who would be a good group of owners that we should sit down to, that you think we can brainstorm with them how to leverage this kind of offering.
Yeah, and I think
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh yeah, I was going to say the one thing that we always should remember, it's it's something that increases the value of the building. If it's just empty space in an office building and it goes from office space to office space, that's not a trigger for the assessment change. We really need to be thinking about using the TIF on those properties, like Paul said, that are underutilized and perhaps trending towards obsolescence. And we need to think about when someone invests in those properties, then the TIF becomes an option. And just filling the office space is perhaps a different avenue than the TIF. That's just kind of from a theoretical standpoint on what I've seen in the past.
Yeah, and one of the things that's difficult right now, and I'm sure you're all worried about, is our commercial industrial. The backbone of it is office space. And everybody's worried what's going to come out of this pandemic. We're all working from home. You all love it, especially if you had to commute into Boston. You're really loving it. You just added 3 days of your 3 hours to your life every day. Dell has always, from what I understand, has had a philosophy of, hey, we want people working from home and have common work area and carry a lot less office space. I think that's going to be the wave for the future, but obviously it's going to affect us. So yeah, it's very worrisome. And are we going to have increased, is vacancy rates going to continue to increase on our office space? So yeah, it's not, TIFs are great on the new stuff or large additions, but a concern of yours is definitely, what are we going to do to backfill our space? The good news that I can tell you is obviously a lot of it is owned by Capital Group, Billy DePietri. And he does a phenomenal job. I don't know how he does it, but he is very good at backfilling his space. So we've been very fortunate with him, although he does have some vacancies now. I am confident that he will backfill his space. But there are some buildings like CAS 118 and 120 have been notorious for again, they're older buildings. They lack the cafeteria space that people want, so they don't have to leave. The good news for 120, that just got purchased by Dave Ferris. Dave's a homegrown guy. Dave did a phenomenal job refurbishing 352 Turnpike. He's very aggressive, very similar to what Billy does. So I think we're going to see that revitalized. You guys already know we have a tenant going in there. And I think he'll end up with 118 as well. 118 sits on the land for 120. They have a land lease there, different owner, but it was the same owner that had 120 prior to. So I do have some confidence that we have good owners that can backfill some of the space. But there are buildings like CAS that just aren't moving. 225 Turnpike has had issues over the years. So we do have a couple problem spaces that we need to, Marika's been doing a really good job trying to hook people into spaces and helping. Yeah, office is definitely, it worries me.
Yeah, we've had lots of discussions about the office space issue, and obviously we have a lot of space, office space along Route 9. So yeah, I love the idea of thinking about ways that it could be repurposed and to things other than office space potentially, if that's sort of where things are going to be trending. But yeah, you're right. We're going to be in competition with our neighbors to attract potential tenants. So I've learned, I didn't know much about tips before, and Rob's been awesome. He's such a guru at this. So he's been really helpful, and it's been really helpful listening to you too. And I agree. I think Chris said earlier that there was this sort of misconception that tips were like just throwing free money at businesses, which is clearly not the case. But are there, and I think there is a lot of broad support from what I'm hearing from other committees too. So hopefully this is, going to go in that direction. But I'm just trying to think, aside from that misconception, which I think we all need to become conversant on why that's a misconception, are there any real, what are the potential drawbacks that we should be thinking about, if any?
For me, it's just, I think it's Julie, it's what you guys are talking about. It's really fighting the concept, the conception of, it's a freebie for everybody. And really, it's just, you got to educate people, and it's just, you attract a new building or a large addition that you wouldn't normally get. Hey, now, once the TIF runs out, well, even during the TIF, you're going to get some additional tax revenue. And then the building's there. The building's there that wouldn't probably be there, or the addition is there. The large addition, you brought jobs into the area to help support, the restaurants and things of that nature, post-COVID. It's just that conception. The argument here is, hey, we're a single rate town. Why give these people why are they paying less taxes than the senior citizen on Social Security who needs to foot her tax bill, and we've got this large multi-million-dollar company. Those are the types of perceptions I think you battle. And really, I think you educate people, and you've got to formulate a game plan. When is your thought when this would be a good thing to do? What's our strategy? Rob probably has a lot better idea of that, putting something together like that. But I think when you're presenting it, you just can't leave it wide open and say, oh, it's TIFs. And really, it's going to involve you guys working with the selectmen and saying, hey, do you buy into this? And then how do we want to approach it? How aggressive do we want to be? And, what kind of package are we looking to put together? I think that's really, and then you can further educate the public on it. You've got a product that you can bring to them almost. Rob, does that make sense?
Absolutely. It all has to do with the story. And it comes down to making sure that, and you said it right up front, it is required to get state incentives that there be a job creation element to it. You can do a TIF only if it's only just kind of flatlined. However, I think if we can point to using the CAS building as an example, if that were a TIF project and we were able to say that there was job creation as a result, and that over time we would collect more tax revenue through the investment in the property, those two things should help dissuade any kind of complaints about the taxes. But it has to be a strong story, and it can only be used, I hate to say it, every once in a while. We don't want to be the town that does a TIF for every single project. We have to be selective, but that requires all of us to collaborate with the property owner and the potential business coming in.
And again, Rob, I think that's putting together a strategy, you guys working with the selectmen, and hey, what are our targets? Are we looking at 10-year TIFs? Are we looking at 15-year TIFs? Are we looking at 20? Kind of where do we want to be, so that you can fully explain it to people and understand it. Don't leave it so open-ended that, we're open for TIFs. Well, you're going to get these questions. Is it going to include personal property? Is it not going to include personal property? Try to get something put together. Obviously, you don't want to make so restrictive that you can't cater to all cases coming in, or adjust. But I think you got to have some type of game plan.
I just want to make sure we're competitive. So with the Dell property, like you're talking, half of it's in Westboro. I know that Westboro has been trying to get people on their side. I don't want to wind up with the parking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Woody, that's a great point, because, when you go back and look at the original plan to build a campus by EMC, buildings 1 through 4, when you drive in, the real old ones on the right, the game plan was to tear those down and build a building in Westboro. In Southborough, we get the parking lot. You have to be very concerned of that. And the other thing, unfortunately, is, they have sewerage, we don't. In that complex, there's only so much capacity that Westboro will give that property. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's definitely a big issue. And obviously they've been very aggressive handing out TIFs.
Yeah.
Very aggressive about what?
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Very aggressive about what?
They've been aggressive about handing out TIFs. They've got 5 of them. And the most recent one, Chris, is Olympus. I mean, I guess they were going back and forth between Westboro and Marlboro. Now Marlboro could give a huge percentage off, but you know, they were a very large split rate town. So I don't think Westboro had to give too much away to beat them. But there again, it's all about trying to attract people. And you know, if you want your property to be developed or redeveloped, it's, you know, are you going to get in the game or aren't you? Really?
Yeah, this is why it's incredibly important that we meet regularly with these business leaders who can give us insight ahead. I mean, I remember when we first got started, we were meeting with them and we got insight about their potential moves and selling of property ahead of the brokers. And we've held meetings with the businesses. But I think we need to go back to that, where we're meeting regularly with Billy, Dave Ferris, and a couple of the others. So we have a measure of the pulse of what's really going on as opposed to reacting. We should be anticipating their next with them as partners, if you will. I know that's not a politically correct name, but in these times, we have to be working as a team to what are all the things we can do to support them.
Yeah, you definitely, Chris, want to know what's coming down the pike. I mean, why wouldn't you? And that's the great thing for me working for a small community, is you get to know the business owners. It's not all these huge buildings and you don't know what's going on. You know, we have a tight-knit community. And you can do that and you should do that. I reach out with them every year. Most of the owners, I'm meeting with them beginning of January to go over the tenant list, figure out what they have coming up for leases that are going. I also trying to figure out what the vacancy rates are as of January 1st. What are they seeing? What market conditions? I mean, they're the eyes and ears. They're boots on the ground for you, you know? So why wouldn't you keep up with that? Without a doubt.
Well said.
I mean, the other thing too, Woody, I just wanted to go over with you guys, you know, we talk about TIFs. I think Rob made a great point. It is a tool. There's no doubt it's a tool. The thing that worries me is just, I know lurking out there somewhere is probably Sam Stiver's listening. Sam made a great point to me is he stopped in my office about a year ago and we're talking about the EMC property. And you really got to get the zoning in shape so that you can attract these people. They don't want to wait for zoning changes and things of that nature and go to boards and committees and trying to get special permits and all this stuff. Other communities aren't like that. They've got their zoning ready to go. And you know, we're competing against these people. And when we put up so many barriers, you know, we're not an attractive group right now. When I look at what you guys are doing downtown, okay, that's a great thing. You're trying to get the zoning squared away, trying to get some options. That's the way to approach first. That comes way before TIF talk and anything like that. You really need to get the zoning straightened out. And you know, like Sam was saying, well, maybe we go to 4 stories, and he was just throwing out some examples, you know, to help try to attract people. And it's really know the market. And, you know, if you're serious about this, tweak your zoning and get it ready so you can be competitive. Because we can do all these things and talk about all these things. If we don't get on the ball with our zoning, forget it. People aren't even going to look at us. They're not going to waste their time, really. And Rob probably can attest. You're laying out a lot of money for these things, and they have a good time for it. Time, you know, time's money, guys. We all know that. And you know, they're laying out a lot of cash. You know, it's not 300,000 or 400,000, it's millions. And you know, they have a good time. They have a good time for it. So, you know, what you're doing, I hope we can do on a much larger scale. What you're doing downtown. And start picking up. And again, Sam made a great point. You know, the big money maker for us is going to be, if we can get that EMC property to go, is to get zoning and look at these things and hopefully, you know, make us more competitive.
You said that well. I remember talking to the developer. He lives in, his name escapes me. It's a name everybody would remember, but he was involved in the development of Shrewsbury's, you know, where Whole Foods is located.
Grossman.
Howard Grossman.
Yeah, pardon me?
Howard Grossman.
Yeah. He said, Chris, when I went down to Shrewsbury, they were waiting with a cup of coffee. They had everything done and ready to go for him to get going.
Yeah, they're on the ball.
So
I have a-
listen,
I
wait
just
Go ahead,
6
Julie.
months or a year before we get the permits.
So, Julie,
I
go
have
ahead.
Yeah, I have a logistical question, and I'm sorry if this is really basic, but so the way TIFs work, is it that we identify as a town properties that would be eligible for TIF and then accept bids from people who want to come do something there? Or is it somebody comes and says they want to do something in a town and we negotiate and we grant them a TIF?
So
Yeah.
this is the process at its most simple. They send a letter of intent to the town manager expressing interest in incentives. That kind of starts the process. The town manager, through the Board of Selectmen, says, yes, we would consider it. And then they negotiate what's called a Tif agreement, which includes the percentages and length of the TIF. Usually the Board of Selectmen votes to support, but then the legislative body has to approve it. We as a group or the
Town meeting, you mean?
town meeting, yes.
Does
We
it
as
go
the
to
group,
State as well?
what was that?
Rob, does it go to the state as well for approval or
It
for
It
an
does.
approval to bring it to town meeting? Is that how it works? That's the part I don't understand.
No, it is first approved by the town at town meeting, and then is approved by a group called the Economic Assistance Coordinating Council in Boston.
And
So
that's to
it really
make sure
doesn't-
that- That's to make
Yeah.
sure for eligibility. Okay.
Exactly, because the reason why, even if it's just a TIF only, it has to go to the state is because DOR has to kind of give their check off to anytime you're giving out taxes. But from our standpoint, we can proactively say there are areas in town where if someone came forward with a project, we would entertain a TIF. But it basically starts with the company writing the letter of intent.
Is there a way, so for example, if we're talking about downtown, and we've talked a lot about, Park Street is one of the areas we identified potentially, if obviously it's privately owned at the moment, but is there a way to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know, like, for example, Marlboro was looking for a brewery to come in, and they put out a RFP, and they were actively soliciting. Is there a way for the town to do something like that, including a TIF? Or, like, obviously they can't guarantee it because it has to be voted on by town meeting, but encouraging people to, specifically present plans for one specific area, and, with the option of, asking them to apply for a TIF?
So there would be two things that would be pretty important right there. First thing, the TIF could only be on the commercial element to it. So if they were doing mixed use with residential up above, people should understand that the TIF is only on the commercial side. The second part is that would be the Board of Selectmen coming forward with a policy and saying, listen, if we have someone investing in the Park Street area, we are going to identify a TIF of 7 years. It's going to be on the commercial element, and the percentages are going to be 75% the first year, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 10, 10 for that. And you could bring that out to the development community. Then they can add that into their pro forma and determine what the overall costs are going to be. But that would be the Board of Selectmen kind of setting some type of policy.
Is that?
Again, getting a strategy.
Yeah, and that's clearly something that I feel like, I'd love to see our town be a little bit more proactive about, because I feel like things just keep sort of happening. And I know I'm the EDC representative on the master plan committee right now, relatively new to that role. But is this something that makes sense to try to incorporate to a master plan as like a goal for, the next decade, of identifying certain properties and setting up this sort of system where we put out, bids for, requests to have people come in and present plans for development in certain areas, and including, potentially encouraging TIFs?
Are you asking? I mean, I think we could do something more simple, making sure that the master plan said that the town would consider using the tax incentive program to attract businesses in town. I don't think we want to get too far into the weeds for the identification of properties and or the identification of percentages, because, you know, there has to be a job creation element, and we also want to see a certain scope with, you know, size and investment.
Okay.
Rob, what are the minimums? The one thing that's never covered in classes is it's always glazed over is the job creation. Is there a certain amount, like a minimum of how many people or percentage? How does that work?
Yeah, so basically at the state level, to get the investment tax credit, there has to be a job creation of at least one job.
That's all.
That at least one. But the jobs have to be created, and you can spread them out over a couple of years, but you have to maintain those jobs for at least 5 years. So if you have someone come in and says, we're going to create 50 jobs over 5 years, we're going to create 25 jobs the first year, 25 the second. By year 3, they're going to have created those 50 jobs. And it might be some percentage, like 90% of the way there. If they don't make it, you can decertify the TIF. But that's how you get the investment tax credit on the property.
Okay. A wealth of information.
Yeah,
Nice to have them, isn't
It
it?
just saved me a lot of continuing ed time.
yeah. Well, the paperwork is pretty simple for anyone looking to do that. And the thing that when I was working at the state, you'd always try to see how much the investment was, because you know as well as I do, it's not a one-to-one. They invest $1, it doesn't increase the assessment that much.
Yeah.
So it could be that they're investing $1 million in the property, and the amount of assessment increase is so small, it's not even worth it. So, which is where the identification of certain properties might be useful.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions for Paul? Paul, do you have any questions or any more comments for us?
I don't, and just so you know, I mean, I'm here to support you guys, whatever you need, run numbers, anything, questions. You know, I'm always available. Claire's always knocking on my door and calling, and I hear from Chris quite a bit. And obviously, Marika and I, we talk quite a bit. So I'm here for you guys, whatever you need. And go Pats.
Go Pats. I appreciate you being here tonight, buddy. I really do. Thank you. I was trying to find out any negatives I could find, because everybody I've spoken to so far, there's really no real negatives, you know, besides, you know, that you just might not, you get the incremental return. So thank you again.
I think the incremental return of just changing the perception that we're open for business is a huge.
Agreed.
So even if we don't end up doing TIFs, just the fact that we're open for business sends a big message. And I can say that coming from the brokerage side of the world. Because right now the perception is we are not open for business at all.
How do we change that perception to let people know? I mean, that's going to be tough. It's going to be a hard sell.
Well, I think part of it is Paul, if I may so, you're the town's ambassador. You go out there and you meet with the decision makers, and working with Marika or any of us on a team basis, when you hit the trail and meet with them, are going out there. We have a little pamphlet. So we have a meeting and we get a sense of the pulse of each of the, I think every town should know the pulse of our business community, so that we can be responsive, not as a reaction, but in a proactive way, so we get ahead of the issues that we're confronting. So Paul, you're a...
And again, Chris, really, the proactive part again is it's all going to come back down, and I'm sure Rob will agree. It's all coming down to zoning. You've got to be prepared to attract these people.
We have to identify the zoning problems, identify the infrastructure problems, and figure out a solution, because we've got numerous problems against us. We have sewage, we have water, we have zoning. They're not insurmountable, but they're there, and it's not.
But Paul, it does come down to the zoning. zoning by right uses, streamlining the permitting process
Yep.
can be more valuable than the tax incentives, which is why if we are going to be changing the zoning in our downtown, we want to make sure that people will vote to support it because it could come back around. If we are the town that proposes a zoning change and it is voted down, that perception goes out into the marketplace. So we have to make sure that
Exactly.
we're
You're just known as, hey, we're wasting our time. And again, it's you're swinging a lot of money out there, and they
Oh,
just
that's
don't-
what they're already saying.
what's that?
That's what they already say about our town.
And
We
it
can't-
is, and really, a lot of times, honestly, guys, the players in the market don't even look at Southborough because of that. And really, you can say you're business friendly, but really it's your zoning that's gonna do the talking. People gotta be able to do stuff by right and not just completely be nitpicked and going back to boards over and over and over again. And something that should be done in 3 months is, a year and a half. They don't have time. They just don't, it's too much time. And right now, that's our biggest obstacle.
Most tenants make their decision to move like within 24 months. So they don't have time to wait, 2 years to get the zoning approved. Like it doesn't work. The math.
Yeah, a lot of times too, Savannah, is, a year and a half goes by and then they get denied. Well, you just lit a lot of money on fire and for nothing. And
You've already given notice on your other space. So you're putting yourself in a real hole from
again, as Rob says, now that's out in the marketplace, and that's why we don't have a very good perception. Really, you got to really pound that away, and it's unfortunately, I get a lot of complaints about the planning and zoning. It just takes too long, and they're not very open-minded. Right, wrong, and different. That's
Yeah,
where we
Paul,
are.
I think you're saying that means a lot because you're the inside voice. You've got insight that most of everybody in town hall, including the Board of Selectmen, don't have. And when you make a statement like that, it carries enormous weight. And I think when you're having those conversations with the Board of Selectmen, that ought to be tantamount as you project to the future. We're not going to move unless we get our zoning act together. That's second to none, as opposed to, something that just keeps us.
You got a question. Really, I think Julian mentioned it, is you really got to get the selectmen on board. I think that's the key. Is really, in a lot of these towns, they got to almost drive the bus and say, hey, we're committed to this, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this for zoning. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're really going to, push and make ourselves marketable. And I hope, talk as much as you can with the selectmen. And really, I'd like to see, in my 20 years, I don't think they've been very aggressive. A little bit more recently, but still not in the area that's really going to help us, make massive improvements.
And I think part of it is just there hasn't been I don't think it was an intentional. I think there just wasn't a focus on it. So, everyone sort of
I agree.
was kind of in their silos. So they saw that as like a planning board issue or a zoning board issue and just kind of let it run that way. But, I think part of putting together the master plan now and also thinking about, what we're doing in collaboration with the Board of Selectmen and the planning board to try to get zoning done, and I don't know, we had a joint meeting with them a couple of weeks ago when we were honestly largely in agreement on most of the things that we wanted to do for downtown zoning at least, and hopefully that can be used as a template going forward. But it made, EDC's been talking about zoning for years, but it really, but the Board of Selectmen is now kind of leading the charge, and that's, like you said, that's what needs to happen. We don't have any power to do anything. So with them leading the charge and us sort of doing a lot of the work also, and with the planning board engaged, it's been really great. So hopefully that builds some momentum to do some of this other stuff too, because you're right, you look at downtown, it's such a crazy example of it, because if you look at what it used to look like, it used to look beautiful 50, 70 years ago. And it's not that anybody actively did anything bad. It's just that there was no plan. So things sort of started getting dilapidated. And when older buildings were taken down, there wasn't a good plan for what was going up next. So there wasn't cohesion. There wasn't any, grand overarching anything. And so it's just sort of patchworky and not all that nice looking. So that's what we're trying to put together.
Yeah, Julie, it's interesting. You know, I was born and raised, and my family's been 85 years on Newton Street. And,
Oh, really?
It's been a long time. I remember when Marlboro Savings Bank came in, and the house there was a disaster that we took there, and then after that it was the Baltaz boys and their father moving across the street from the old flower shop to renovating the fire station. Other than that, what have we had downtown? That's why I'm hoping Peter's building on the corner of Newton and East Main goes, because it's not a lot there to attract, and trust me, I love my little quaint downtown area that I grew up in. It's still my hometown. But really it's just we got to do better down there.
Yeah.
I appreciate all your efforts on that. And what disappoints me is Peter's building, that's not a big building. People go back and forth. We're not trying to put a 5-story building in the center.
This is Peter Beamish you're referring to.
It's a 7,000 square foot building, 3,500 square foot footprint that's desperately needed. And it's just mind boggling to me, just how much resistance on something that to me is just not really that difficult of a decision. So, I just keep plugging away, and really, Julie, you mentioned the master plan. One of the things is, what was the original master plan done 10, 15 years ago? We had a lot of momentum. It got put together, and, I hate to say it, ended up being a dust collecting doorstop.
That's exactly what it did.
We spent all that money, and now, hey, we're going to update it. And, that's great. But, a book doesn't, a book or that's not going to get it done. It's a plan. You got to follow through with the plan. And if people don't invest into the thought process and what that document says, I just, and you guys are here to push this time, which is good. So I'm hoping we don't lose momentum, but we continue to gain momentum and support by the selectmen. That's all I got, guys.
We agree
Awesome.
with you.
Kickoff's coming up, isn't it?
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, Paul. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Have a good night, guys.
You too. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Going back. Chair report. I really don't have anything to talk about right now. Haven't really done anything this week. Sorry.
We just
Amen.
met
Yeah.
I know, didn't we? I feel like we just
I don't know if anybody else has a members report. Any members have anything they want to talk about, Julie, or anybody?
No.
All right. Marika, do you have anything for this week?
Oh, not really. I'll skip my report.
Oh, okay. So going down, we got Downtown Business Village District review version 4. I'm sure, hopefully everybody's got it and had time to look at it a little bit. And Marika, thank you very much for doing that ginormous red line. So there's a red line, then there was a red line on the red line. So thank you.
Oh, red line.
That was awesome, like super helpful just to kind of figure out what was new, what was the third version, what was the fourth version. And that was really, really helpful to see that. So thank you for doing that today.
So, all right. I guess I will leave this up to Claire and Julie to go in more detail on this one, since you guys have been dealing with Judy. So Julie, I'll let you take it away.
All right, thank you. I know we talked about this a bunch last week, and so this is just the product that Judy came back and sent to us based on the meeting that we had on a couple of weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving. So basically, she took all of the comments from that meeting. We had discussed all the different comments that people had submitted to her, and Lisa sort of led the meeting, and she pulled out what she saw as like the main issues. I think there were about 12 or 15 of them that we went through, maybe more, that, had some sort of, either there were disagreements or, there were issues to be discussed. And we went through, and we were, representatives from each committee were there, from Planning Board, from Board of Selectmen, from EDC, from SHOPC, and we all got to speak on each point. And there was almost complete consensus on almost every issue. So it was like one of these amazing meetings where I got off and I was like, oh my goodness, government just worked. This is incredible. And it really, you know, I'm hoping that from what I looked through this seems to capture the things that we talked about. I think there might be a couple of points of contention. I had a couple of minor changes that I wanted to make, nothing too major that I can go through. And but I think our objective tonight is to just discuss this version, any comments or changes that we want to make, suggest, and then vote, I think, to to support this. Board of Selectmen is meeting on Tuesday of next week, the 15th. So we wanted to make sure we had this meeting before then, so we can tell them, hey, yes, we voted on this, or voted on this to support this with these couple of modifications or these suggestions. And then hopefully on Tuesday, Board of Selectmen will adopt it. And then it goes to planning board. And then I think, Claire, I think you have the dates off the top of your head. I don't, so you can hop in. But I think we're talking, there are a couple dates in January that planning board has meetings scheduled for, and we'll submit that this should be an agenda item because we have to have 2 rounds of public comment on any zoning changes. So those would be, if this is adopted next week, those would be held in January. And, hopefully then that would go to town meeting in March or whenever it gets to be held this year. So that's kind of where we are. Does anyone have anything to add? Claire, do you have anything to add? Did I miss something?
She's on mute.
Okay.
Claire's
Hop
on
in at Claire, you're on mute, but if you want to hop in at any time. I can't see you, so I'll just keep going until you stop me. So did everyone have a chance to kind of take a look at this? I'm happy to share what I think are the couple of issues, but if anyone else wants to join in.
Yeah, I did. I don't know if this is the right place, but I know based on what I've been hearing, I think there was a big debate about mixed use. And I'm afraid if we don't get mixed use, we're not going to optimize what we do with the downtown. And Peter Bemis has a lawsuit because the planning board changed their mind about an aspect of his presentation. I think he did have originally mixed
I'm
use.
just checking to see if you can hear me.
Now I can, Claire. I can hear you.
So I guess what I was saying is, as we go forward, that I hope that's where we go. And then how do we deal with Peter Bemis has a lawsuit against the planning board.
Oh, thanks.
And
I can't hear you. I might have to switch my phone.
Yeah, Claire,
My
you're in and out.
connection dropped all of a sudden.
Okay, you're in and out, and I don't know that you can hear us.
so that was my only response. I don't know if that's the place where you put that zoning.
So yeah, so mixed use is in there. If you look at part 4 on the second page, down.
Should I screen share the document?
Sure, yeah, thank you.
Can you see it?
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I can. Thank you. So
All
yeah,
right.
so 4 on page 2, mixed use development is in there.
Wait, sorry.
And I think that's,
Okay.
so that is it's a permitted use. So yeah, and I agree. I think Marika had made a comment, the numbering isn't the easiest to follow on here. We might want to clean that up a little bit. But if you look on page 2, part 4, it's section 174, 8.4.1, permitted use A, permitted use as follows. And then, oh, I don't know why is it twice? Oh, all use permitted in the resident. Okay, and then B, I don't know why A and B are, I feel like maybe that can be combined.
Yes, I think even Claire made that comment that I don't know why she made an A and a B. I think we should combine that, permitted uses. Originally, it's also just, one is residence A and B, and then 2 should be mixed use development and continuation.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I'm going to come back at this, and I don't understand what's happening. If Peter Bemis has a lawsuit, and he had, and somebody can correct me, originally he went in with a mixed use plan, and
We probably shouldn't talk about any litigation with the town though, Chris,
Yeah, so I think,
or specific
No,
projects.
but
I know, but we shouldn't be talking specific
And also-
projects for this. This is a bylaw for downtown, not a specific project
no,
or
I-
the litigation.
The only reason I bring it up is that here we're going for mixed use, and in the legal court system, Peter's going in with a non-mixed use facility. So I don't know how we deal with that later on, but
yeah, I think that's just going to be, I think they'll have to see what happens with the litigation, and then, he'll have to apply for whatever he wants to, and maybe there'll be different options at that point. But I think we want to be careful not to focus on just one parcel, especially one that's kind of been a hot topic. And I totally understand, that was part of the catalyst for us talking about zoning, but I think mixed use is allowed in this as a by right in this version. So I think we're okay there.
great.
But let's combine A and B as permitted use as follows. A couple minor comments that I had in that same section, if you scroll down, C, permitted use up to maximum of 3,000 square feet. Subsection 3, where it says restaurants with indoors, it says with indoor seating and outdoor seating. I was wondering, do we want to require outdoor seating also? And I mean, that almost sounds like you have to have outdoor seating, and I certainly want to encourage outdoor seating, but I don't know if I want to demand outdoor seating. And would they be in violation if it's winter and they're not providing outside? You know what I mean? Like, should it be and or outside seating? I know that's nitpicky, but that makes sense.
That makes sense.
That makes sense to me.
Sorry, I
And
just
then-
lost connection, so I didn't hear any of that. But that's okay.
okay. Do you want me to say it again?
No, do I need to hear it? Otherwise, just continue. That's fine.
I'll send you my notes. Another one, so also under, if you keep going in that same section under D, permitted uses by special permit from the planning board. And I don't know if this was changed or not. I think this was changed. I don't think it should have been. So microbrewery is listed as number 2 under there. I think that we want to put that back as a permitted use, either as a straight permitted use, or at least as a permitted use up to a maximum of 3,000 square feet. Because right now, where it is, and I think this may have been an oversight, but it's under.
She actually moved it under D. So I don't know why she moved it under D.
I think it was
under
probably
E.
just a mistake, because remember she was calling it like a brewery or distillery, and we're like, no,
Yeah.
use the design term. So I think maybe it just ended up in the wrong spot. So do we think it should go in back to
The permitted uses.
yeah, as like under A, which is all straight permitted use, or under B, which is permitted use up to maximum of 3,000 square feet? Where did she have, hold on, let me see where she had.
She had it under B.
She had under B. I mean, I'm fine either way. My only thought was like, is a microbrewery, if they're actually brewing on premises, is that bigger than 3,000 square feet? Because potentially,
No, it
No.
can be tiny. You can do
Yeah.
something as small as like 1,000 square feet, or 1,600.
all that they commit like equipment and stuff, if they're actually brewing on site.
It
Yeah.
depends upon the brewery size, the brewer size, but Medusa in Hudson
Yeah, that's
might
true.
be less than 3,000 square feet.
You think that's less than 3,000 square feet?
It could be, but I do know that when I was talking with some craft brewers who are not offering food service, they were actually only looking in the neighborhood of 1,600 to 2,000 square feet.
Okay, that's fine. And again, it's allowed by special permit. And again, also there's not a lot of places that could, accommodate more than 3,000 square feet. So maybe that's fine. And then I think we talked about this and I don't remember what we concluded, but why are medical and dental offices requiring special permits? Shouldn't that be also a by right?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
I mean,
Yeah, we did speak about it. So that's why I don't have the notes or the minutes from the joint meeting, because, so that's the only thing that's missing in here, to see if she put in everything that we had discussed, which is a bit of an important part. Because we also spoke about dog kennel, that we didn't want a dog kennel in downtown.
Yep.
And it's still in there under D.
Woof.
all right, so take out dog kennel. Yeah, so those were the only real issues. Those are just the things that jumped out at me that I thought were different than what we had discussed. Multifamily housing up to 8 units. So that is, so that's by special permit. She has a note in here, allowing up to 12 units would probably be more effective in attracting a developer. And she suggested that we discuss this with local developers or property owners to see. I mean, again, in the current boundaries of downtown, I'm hard pressed to see where we'd fit an 8-person or 12-person. And, from my perspective, I want housing, but I also want non-housing commercial. So, having just a free, taking our limited space for a freestanding multifamily housing of 12 units sounds like a lot of space that, when we're already so minimal. What do others think?
Well, I think we have to think about getting to yes at town meeting.
Yeah.
And we all know that based upon the parcel size and the other setbacks, green space, parking, we know for a fact that we're not going to see something that is 12 units, and the likelihood of anything of 8 is almost minuscule, except maybe Park Street. Because I want that, yes, I would say, listen, let's not go up to 12. If we don't feel comfortable with 8, let's move it to 10. But I mean, I happen to think single digits, 8 is a good number, because the expectation is we're not going to see anything that big.
Okay.
So I would say let's not go up to 12.
I agree.
Agreed.
Well said.
Floor area ratio. This was one of the few topics when we all came together that wasn't perfectly in consensus. And I think maybe I was the one who was out of consensus with that. Because I think, and I should find my notes on it. I should have brought them with me. But I think it had been, I believe it had been 0.4. Is that right? Or 0.35? Hold on, where are we?
Where are you now? Sorry, I lost you.
Sorry.
I think it had originally been 0.35. We moved it up to 0.4.
Oh, here. No. Oh, here. Under 6.
Yeah, but what was it before?
It was, I have it here. It was 0.35.
What I thought. So it was 0.35 at the, and we had some discussions that maybe that was too low. I think the voting ended up leaving it. It was, let me see if I can find my notes. I think the vote either left it at 3.5 or put it at 4. I had wanted it higher, but I was the minority. I think Sam sort of supported it higher too. Again, we want to get to yes, but I had done a quick Google search during the meeting and saw that other towns actually had a much higher one. I don't want to be too restrictive, but I also at this point don't want to be too controversial. So.
Well, I use this. This is a great way for, I would actually be okay with going higher than 0.4, but it's that going towards yes. Think about it like this. Murrow's Market, no, the restaurant right there. It's a 1,700 square foot building on an 11,000 square foot lot. The FAR for that property is 0.16. You put a second story on top of that, that's 0.32 on that property. If you don't go up higher, you're not going to get any type of a density or incentive. So the higher you go up with the FAR, the more development you can see on a parcel. The more FAR you have and the higher height that you allow, it allows for more green space on the site. So 0.35 is too low. 0.4 is probably too low, but it's getting to that yes, right? So I don't think we want to push too much if we're worried that people will use that as a means to shoot down the zoning.
Can I say something? I had the feeling that people didn't really understand what we were discussing. And I felt that Judy Barrett was actually kind of wondering why we were even talking about a 0.5% increase, because she said that's like nothing. And she had recommended a 0.75 in her ZAC report. So I think if we would have some kind of examples that we can show, for instance, a Morrow's, and tell them this is the lot, and if we would go up 2 stories, this is how big it can be. Maybe then people will understand what we're talking about, because no one really understands what is floor area ratio or how to, picture it.
Marika, I think that's an awesome idea. And just because you're right, nobody knows what that is. And even explaining it well and having your brain understanding the math, it's hard to visualize. And I think that's what I kept saying at the last meeting. I'm like, what does that mean for a building on a property? I think we want to be careful about picking out other properties, specific properties, but I think, yeah, just showing what that means. And you're right also that it's so tied to height, which was one of the other few sort of potentially controversial pieces to this. There was one person who was concerned about going up more than 2 stories at all. So I think I think showing. I think the more we put out there, the pictures of what Southborough used to look like, which had 4-story buildings, and it'd be great to. I wonder if there's a way we can find the height of what some of those buildings were, like the Southborough Arms or something like that. I don't know if that's possible, but it'd be fascinating. Or the school that had been down there, just to sort of visualize what does it mean to be a 3 or 4. And again, I don't know that we need 4 necessarily, but 2 seems a little bit restrictive to me. But you're right that the FAR and the number of stories are very connected with each other, because you quickly lose the ability to have any height if your FAR is too small.
Yeah, so I think we should, if we can have an image with a 3-story building and a FAR of 0.5, just to show people what that would look like, maybe that'll help.
I think that's right.
I think with Rob's explanation, it takes the tension out of the room, because nobody really understands this. And I think Rob is about the only person who has it all down, and Suzanne, who lived this. So you're our point people, and I think people will listen. They want this town fixed up and ready to go. I think we've got a lot of positive support the way the board has led us.
Yeah.
Okay. So any more on the FARs?
So do we want to, so she's proposed 0.45. Should we just leave it as it is and say we accept that? Or
0.45 or 0.75?
Well, right now it's at 0.45.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that workable? I mean,
or do we want to make it, she says here, she has a comment, you could up to 0.45 or even 0.50 as of right, and then give the planning board discretion to approve a higher FAR, which is up to 0.7.
I like that pathway, because one, it allows someone to have the flexibility to put something that's a little bit dense, but then puts the power back in the planning board's hands to determine whether or not to get up there. Because like, once again, Murrow's Market is, 0.16 FAR. If you have a 3-story building right there, that gets you up to 0.48. And, Murrow's Market would be right on the roadway. It's got the parking. It could work there. So if she said, Marika, the suggestion that you made about by right up to a certain FAR and the planning board having some potential to go higher, gives us some flexibility, but doesn't give and cede all control from the town. I'd support that.
Yeah, me too. Anybody else?
I agree.
Agree.
Like Rob keeps saying, I'll take the win.
Yeah.
Just to see it get through.
Oh, Claire's been putting notes in here. Sorry. I think her connection was lost, so she's put some stuff in the chat. So she said she suggests talking with developers, but what doesn't say what the discussion should be. Understand that unless people can relate to existing structures, most people are not going to be able to understand. Yeah, so what we're saying. Agree that Rob can go, Rob.
I was gonna say, I think what she means about about talking with the developers, I think she's probably suggesting to get a from them of what makes a viable project.
Yeah.
Right. And so is 8 a viable, are we in that window of what's a viable project for them to even consider it?
Yep, I agree. Or is it just not even worth it to have it if it's only going to be? But we also need to remember that, like, these zoning bylaws are, will last a long time because it's obviously so incredibly difficult to change. So like, we're thinking that right now, but maybe in the future, 8 would be fine. If we really don't want more than 8, or if we really don't think it can pass 8, maybe leave it in there, even if 8 doesn't seem viable right now, but we think 12 won't pass, or we don't want 12, which could be either one or both. So maybe 8 does make sense. And maybe at some point in the future, 8 works for somebody,
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, so that, again, I mean, they're sort of related, but I think height was the other piece of it. So in version 3, which is the version we had originally discussed with the joint committee meeting, it had been 35. That was contentious a little bit. I mean, nothing was very contentious, but that was one thing that definitely generated some discussion and different views. In this draft, she raised it to 40 now. So just so you know.
Actually, Julie, the original, our bylaw allows for 35.
Oh, okay.
And draft 3, she changed to 40. And this time she left it at 40, so she did not change it. Because again, I think we had discussed that. And the things she changed was under H, which was 45, and she changed it to 48. Height increase with a special permit.
Yeah. So she had added this minimum maximum ground floor height. This wouldn't be applicable to existing buildings, but new buildings going forward, a ground floor must be at least 12 feet and no higher than 18 feet, which I guess is standard for commercial buildings. So theoretically under H, which is a special permit required. So again, they would have to go to the planning board first and get a special permit. You could have up to 48 feet. So that would be 4 stories, assuming the ground level was only 12 feet. So that's the highest that it would go. So again, I think it'd be helpful to see what that looks like. It's a little bit less hard to visualize than the FAR, but I don't know if, people, I am having trouble thinking about, okay, what would a 4-story building look like that's 48 feet downtown? I don't know if there's a way we can.
I believe that's taller than the public safety building, by the way.
That's taller than the public. Yeah, I'm sure. Because what's the public safety building?
I think 35, 36.
Okay. So it's, by a little bit. Yeah, by a pretty decent amount, another 10 or 12 feet.
Which would look very, very tall. downtown.
But again, that's by special permit. So the by right would be 40, right? But even that, you're right, even 40 is taller than public safety. So maybe that's not a number everyone's comfortable with. So maybe it's, but what 40 allows is 3 stories with an 18-foot ground floor. So it allows an 18-foot ground floor plus 2 12-foot floors above it, right? So, so the 40 number is basically 3 stories. I mean, I'm kind of I'm inclined to leave it, but I'm open to, if other committees are overly concerned about that, I'm open to discussing it.
Do you remember if we discussed it at the joint meeting?
We
I mean, I
did.
don't know what consensus was it just to leave it?
I believe, where am I? I'm looking for my notes on that and I couldn't find them where I thought they were. Yeah, I think we decided to leave it for now. I do agree. And, you know, I feel like I'm so worried about this not going through, but I also want to make sure that we're putting forth something that's worthwhile, since we're going through all this work that will result in a project that somebody wants to build or can build and is feasible. I don't know, Rob, what do you think?
I think offering more flexibility to developers is going to be important. And I think the fact that Judy has pointed out that surrounding communities have something similar. And I think the fact that, once again, there are other limitations such as the parking, open space, setbacks, that are almost going to preclude something that's too massive, are, you know, enough. Because 40 feet, there's that picture of the school.
Yeah.
That thing has got to be like 40 feet back in the day, right? So I say,
I'm sure that's 4 stories. I think I counted it once.
yeah, I would say we leave it in there.
Okay. I'm fine with that too. Again, I feel like I'm just weary of putting forth something that people are gonna have a problem with. But
Well, the other thing is, and I hate to sound like a cynic, but if we make it perfect going in there without anything for them to change, they're going to look for that thing to, you know, tweak. And so if we have it at 40 and it goes in front of the joint group and they say, we really don't like it, can we make this change? Maybe we can feel comfortable with it then, and they can feel as if they were contributors to, you know, the zoning. So, you know, that could be some way to think about it.
okay. I don't think I had a lot of other comments. I think my only other comment was on parking, and I don't think we ended up talking about parking all that much, if I remember correctly.
No, I don't think we discussed anything.
Yeah, so I'm just not sure what to discuss with it, or what if that's just what makes sense. Fine. I know that we had, you know, our committee, Marika, had sent around this really fascinating article about, you know, why we shouldn't put in any parking requirements and let it sort of be like free market parking, which is interesting. But I don't know if that would fly. Is this? Sorry, and I should know this. Is this parking? Is this exactly? This is how we have it now, right?
So I think if I read her, because I did not compare the parking to the existing bylaw, but if I read Judy's comment correctly, that I think it's the same, except she changed the parking regulations for the dwellings to make it more I guess a downtown appropriate rule. So I'm not sure if it's more or less. I'm guessing less.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. So I think it's essentially the same except for dwellings.
But I can double check that.
And she said we're trying to stay reasonably close to your existing requirements. Some existing requirements are not appropriate for town center. Okay, so maybe so I'm assuming she put it in. I don't know. Yeah, I'd be curious we should probably take a look at that. Let me see if I can pull up the zoning bylaw and pull it up real quick. Hold on.
I don't know.
So if someone can remind me, what's the current parking requirement for?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Hold on.
I know Claire just sent in a text. Andrew Mills keeps asking, I don't know if everybody saw it, about the parking. And I think like everything else, there has to be a way that we present it so people feel confident. And Rob, you have a gift for this in the context. I mean, if somebody went nuts and started counting everybody's got a car, so where is everybody's car going to go? Or are they going to park down the street? Or we're going in the wrong direction. I just think we've got to somehow satisfy or help Andrew understand what we're offering.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So when we had our joint session, it was very collegial and there was a lot of agreement, but not every member of the planning board was there. I think there were 3 members there and 2 not there. So, you know, hopefully we can maintain that consensus, but we'll have to see what happens. Hold on, I just pulled up the zoning bylaw. I'm going to try to pull up the parking section of it real quick.
Yeah, I think once someone actually counted all the parking spaces in downtown, so maybe that's, I mean, if that can satisfy people's worries, to just, you know, tell them how many parking lots we actually have, and they're not really fully occupied at the moment. That could be an interesting picture.
Okay, sorry, I'm almost there. Let me see if I can look at this real quick.
This, I don't know if everybody saw Sam's text. He said parcel 5440 solves the parking issue.
Oh, yep.
Again,
yeah.
that parcel's been pivotal for so many things, you know, for downtown. So hopefully.
Okay, yeah. So the current zoning bylaw on parking says that for dwelling, it's 2 spaces for each unit that has 1 or 2 bedrooms, or 3 spaces if it contains 3 or more bedrooms, plus 1 space for each 80 square feet of floor area devoted to a home occupation or professional use. So this new one simplifies it and just says it takes out the requirement for an extra space if there's a 3rd bedroom, and it takes out the square footage requirement for home occupation or professional use. So I'm fine with that. If you guys are.
Is that under 4 though, mixed use development? Did she put it there? 1 space per dwelling unit and 1 space per 300 square feet of non-residential floor area?
Are you looking at the newer?
Yeah, the new one. So she's added the mixed use development. Would that be replacing the or the home, whatever, home business kind of?
No, well, because so she's got, so I was looking at F1.
Okay, yeah.
And there hadn't been a mixed use one previously, I don't think, because there wasn't mixed use. And then, yeah, so she cut a lot of things out that are kind of no longer applicable, and she consolidated a lot of stuff. So, bed and breakfast, I guess, would probably fall under the same as like hotel, motel, boarding room houses and other places that provide overnight accommodation. So in the previous one, in the current one, we said 1 space for each room, plus 1 space for each 2 employees, plus 1 space for each 400 square feet of public meeting area and restaurant. And this, she just cut out that last part. It's 1 space for each guest room, plus 2 space for owner and operators of the premises. So I'm okay with that as well. Anyone else?
I'm okay with that.
All right. Restaurants is the next one. Not, not seeing restaurants listed in the old one. Let's oh, here, restaurants, sorry, I missed it. One space for each 3 seats plus 1 space for each employee. So this changes it to 1 space for each 4 seats instead of 3, which I think is fine. And it does not include spaces for employees. But I'm okay with that. I think I'm okay with that. Are other people's thoughts?
I'm okay with that. Anybody else?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. So the mixed use development that was not contemplated in the current zoning bylaw, one space per dwelling and 1 space per 300 feet of non-residential. So I guess that actually lines up with sort of the hotel motel provision of the current zoning bylaw, which said, you know, in addition to spaces for rooms, 1 space for each 400 square feet of public meeting and restaurant. So I guess that's sort of the same type of thing, except this is 1 space for every 300 square feet. So it's actually a little bit more parking than was contemplated. But again, that was for restaurant and this is more retail probably. So that's probably fine. Professional business office. Fine to sort of count, oh, all offices. So in the current one, it's for all other offices and non-residential use, it's 3.5 spaces for each 1,000 square feet of floor area. And this is 1 space for 300 feet, so pretty much the same, or 1 space for 350 feet for offices above the first floor. I mean, that sounds comparable enough and probably is just modernized, so I would trust Judy's judgment on that. Yeah. Anyone else have comments? Well, those were all the things that I had pulled out. Did anyone else have any other issues? So what do we think is the next step? And I just want to make sure, hold on, there's some notes here from Claire. I just want to make sure I'm catching her. There's a parking issue with CSX and the abutters. The property 5440. It's not guaranteed, right? Sam, if you're on, if you want to hop on, if we can raise you up, if you have any update on 5440, because I agree that could solve it, but I don't know if you have anything to report on that.
Julie, it is being discussed. I think there was perception initially that everything was totally clear on that land in terms of, for those people who knew what was there before, there was a transformer, national grid kind of, those kind of, you know, that kind of stuff. And I don't have the expertise to talk about that. And then there was a big fire. And the question is, I suspect that the selectmen are looking into it, is, as I said, is it liability free? Or it's kind of like when the discussion comes up about the property along Newton Street, you know, was that cleaned up and everything? So I think it's just I don't know one way or the other, but it's just something to really keep in mind. The other thing too is, don't forget with that it was perceived that there was a lot of parking along the CSX railroad lines. And I think everybody knows what's happening now with that. I had a conversation today with Karen Galligan about it. And there is, CSX is looking to work with the town. She's very, very pleased with their cooperation. Understand that each individual property has to be negotiated with CSX, which was something that I didn't realize. And then thinking about it afterwards, those are all private properties that are along the railroad tracks. So that's why each one has to be dealt with. Essentially, because of where the CSX property goes that people have not been looking at, it limits some of the parking that people may have just assumed exists. So in other words, and this was said at a Board of Selectmen meeting when this first came up, so I'm not saying anything that is out of turn. If CSX decided to play hardball, so to speak, they could put up Jersey barriers along the property lines of what they is their property, which would in some cases go right through the parking lots of existing businesses. Hello, hello.
Yeah,
Sorry to drop a bomb, but that's the reality.
But that's that could be a PR nightmare for CSX on the other side of the coin.
Why?
I don't think they care.
Well, you're precluding the town from doing the right thing, and
They don't care.
No, they are, according to Karen, and I talked to her today.
Okay.
They are very, very agreeable to working out easements with the property owners, or I'm not exactly sure that might be the right term, but in other words, they're looking at working out some types of agreements. And they have several agreements with property owners that have currently been worked out. And they have one or two property owners who are, so to speak, and I don't want to put it the wrong way, but this is a give and take kind of thing between CSX and the property owners. So you're either going to play ball with them and come to a mutual agreement, or you're not, and it's going to hold up the whole thing. And just so that everybody understands, this is a topic that is going to be taken up next Tuesday at the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. Sam, do you have anything to add?
Nope, he said he has no update, and like I said, it's going to be taken up next week.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's a decent update, I think. So thank you. All right. So as far as our next steps from our committee, I think we're in agreement on the changes that we want to be made. And I think we should vote on that and then, submit.
So do you need a motion to submit support to the Board of Selectmen for the zoning with modifications discussed?
I think we do. I was just making sure that was the path we wanted to take.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you suggesting such motion?
I am suggesting the motion.
I would second that motion.
Do you want to just say that, express that motion? So I have a motion to write a letter of support to the Board of Selectmen with our minor amendments.
Yep.
Okay, so I have a motion by Rob and a second by Julie. Is that correct?
Yep.
All right. Do the roll call vote as I see it. Rob,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Chris,
yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
myself, yes, and passes unanimously. Excellent.
Who's gonna make those changes?
I
I
can,
could- did you
I
already
can
take
make the
those down?
changes. Yeah, can I make the changes and then I'll send it to you, Julie, and if you can just double check if I put them
Perfect.
all through.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it. I'm like
Thank you.
dying at work right now. So
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, do we have any more on downtown?
is anybody going to be able to join the Board of Selectmen meeting on Tuesday?
I'll be there.
I'll try to be there. My week next week's gonna be insane, but I'll try.
Yeah, I should be there. Hopefully, if anybody else, Rob or anybody
Yeah, Rob,
goes
you'll
up
be
there.
there.
Rob,
Yeah,
it'd be great if
I
you could
can
be there.
try. I don't have my work cell phone with me, so I can't check my calendar, but I'll definitely try to make it.
That'd be great.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Downtown wastewater feasibility study. Claire, do you want to talk to that?
Sorry about that. Yes, absolutely. So there are two responses which have come in, one from Tigan Bond and the other one from Weston Sampson. It has been extremely difficult to get engineering firms to respond.
Oh,
These firms all have plenty of work. And the last time I think that I updated you guys had to do with an issue with procurement where the initial RFQP, whatever you want to call it, was not the way to go, even though this was under $10,000. Laurie Esposito was very, very helpful in putting together what would be acceptable for Mark Purple to approve, so to speak. So went forward with that, got two responses, and this is under the $10,000 requirement for procurement. So in other words, it is to be able to initially provide their analysis for are we barking up the wrong tree, or is this something that is going to be something that can be done? And the two firms that were that responded back said that they had worked with other companies. So here's where I am. So I've got these two proposals. Where does it go from here? I'm not the one to make the decision. And the question is who do you guys want to have review this? There's a couple different options that can be used. I reached out to Brian Shea. He can't do it because of, his company Stantec deals with one of the firms. The second thing is I had talked with Karen Galligan because I thought that the town had an engineer. It turns out that the town doesn't. I guess way back when there was either a contract engineer or whatever. But the fact of the matter is right now that person doesn't exist. So anyway, Rob, you're looking better all the time. So anyway, so where it stands is we have a town planner who is an engineer who could, these responses that came back is for the first part of the feasibility study. It's under $10,000. And essentially what it is can we, are we barking up the wrong tree doing this, or is there something that can be done given the size and the requirements that we have? So we have a town engineer who can review these couple proposals that came in. They are under 3 pages each. Or what we could do is, since we don't have a town engineer, we could say, all right, we can put it out to somebody to review. But the first decision is who's the one who's going to be making the decision in terms of what the company, who the company is going to be moving on with this. All right. Anybody have questions on that so far before I go on? Okay. So therefore, in the past, I had reached out to Mike Sullivan, who some of you may already know. Mike's done just about every single septic design in town. He used to live in town. He's very, very well respected by anybody that you would ask. And what he did was he had helped me initially in terms of reviewing the initial proposal that had gone out. He could, this is beyond the scope of his company, but he would be a very good person to review in order to say, all right, go ahead with this company or go ahead with this company. And the reason would be why. As I mentioned earlier, Brian Shea said that he couldn't pass he couldn't pass it on to anybody in his company because of a conflict. However, he did indicate that both of the companies are very, very well known. Everybody has worked with them and extremely credible. So in other words, it's not somebody who's, coming up, out of the ashes, so to speak. All right. So, I'm recommending that because Mark Purple is the procurement officer, that this go and gets passed on to him for the decisions or the options. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because in these days where everything has to be voted on up, down, and sideways, I just want to make sure that you guys know this is what you have. Do you guys need to vote to pass it on or whatever? Essentially, what are there any next steps that the EDC needs to do? And I'm not exactly sure why, but because the contract is with the town, but and maybe it's something to discuss with the selectmen next Tuesday. I don't know.
Those are all really good questions. I don't know the answer. And I think, we had voted to do this and to use, some of our grant money to help do this. And I don't know that we need to vote to get it approved.
Yeah, see that you're absolutely right, Julie. And what the only thing that I just don't want to do anything unless it passes whatever the 10 steps are that have to be done. And
I don't think there's a problem with going to the engineer to review your bids at all.
So when you say the engineer, would this be somebody who?
Well, that Sullivan guy you just spoke of.
Right. Yeah.
Is that who you were asking about?
Yes, or or Sullivan. Mark. The whole town knows Mike Sullivan, and
Yeah,
so the thing is that he would do it. I just happened to. He was on the advisory committee with me 100 years ago, and I just think that if he was contracted to do a review, he might. I'm sure. Well, I don't know.
Well, why don't you talk to him and see if it's something he's
even-
interested in, and let us know,
Okay. All right.
and then we can go from
Perfect.
there. But
Okay.
I'd rather have somebody that knows more about it than any of us take a look at it and tell us their opinion and why.
Okay, and that's why
and then we can see the price, and then we can go to the. But yeah, I think we should reach out to him, and I think that's in the scope of the grant as well to pay him out of that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Or not
And it would be,
contracted services,
if it would be $200, I would be surprised
Yeah,
if it would be
exactly.
that much.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Do we want to take a vote to just authorize Claire to spend up to, say, $300 for a review from the outside consultant for the?
I'll make
bids?
that motion. Yeah.
Is 300 reasonable? And does this come out of our grant money? And isn't?
You want to say
I'm
500 to be safe?
99% sure that 300, Mike would do it for 300, and yes, it would just be billed to the grant.
Why don't we say up to 300, and then if it's more, we'll revote. Do you want to do it
Yeah.
that way, Julie? But if she's saying it's not, if it's going to be under a couple $100, I don't want to,
Yeah.
go too high.
Okay. I just don't want to add other steps. I just didn't know what was reasonable.
Do you want to? Would you be more comfortable with making it 500, Julie, instead, just so that way that we don't have to come back and meet and do anything?
Yeah, I just have no idea what it costs. So I mean,
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't know how, and I know Claire said there's only 2 and they're not that long. So hopefully, a few $100 sounds reasonable, but I don't.
500 at max is
Okay,
more
let's
than
go with
enough.
500 because I don't think that.
Rob, you want to amend your motion to
Yep.
authorize up to 500?
Yeah, I'll amend that motion to up to 500.
Do I have a second?
Second. Oh,
Okay, have a second. Do roll call as I see it. Rob,
Yes.
Julie,
yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and myself, aye. So
Thanks, guys.
reach
Hey,
out to them,
John.
Claire. Yes,
You guys need an extra member on the EDC.
we need lots of extra members on the EDC.
I'm looking at somebody with 2 big ears.
I know, right?
And
We
a
definitely have a mascot.
This is why I don't sit comfortably for these meetings, because I have people bothering me all the time.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rob.
Yeah, that looks like such a bother.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's your comfort cat.
Yeah.
All right. So
Thanks, guys.
anything else on that, Claire?
That's great news.
No,
we're good.
actually, and the time frame works, right? Because both of the time frames that are worked into each individual, each of the 2 are about the same. So it works right in with the time frame for the work getting done in the spring with the Chapter 90 project. And I call it the Chapter 90 project because it is different from the Main Street work that's currently been done. For those of us who were on that committee, we know that very, very well. And it also fits into, for the second part of it, which would be after the particular systems are recommended, then the next phase of it for spending the rest of the money is to come up with the design for the systems. And bottom line is the amount of money that it would take to do the design and all that kind of stuff will be used by the end of the period of the grant.
Okay.
Any questions?
That's great, Claire. That's a really
Nope,
great.
I'm good. Thank you so much, Claire.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Moving on. Administrative business, approval of minutes from November 19th. Everybody have a chance to take a look at them, I hope.
Yep.
All right. I did as well. I didn't see anything. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second? All right. I'm going to have the motion from Julie because she's the one I heard first. And do I have a second from anybody else?
Yeah, I'll
Second.
second.
Okay. Heard Rob on that one. So Rob seconded. All right. Any discussion? All right. Roll call vote as I see him. Rob?
Yes.
Julie?
Yep.
Chris?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And myself. Aye. So minutes passed unanimously. Moving on, any unfinished business we need to discuss? Okay. Any new business we want to put on?
No.
So,
Sorry.
unfinished business, I would like to, so with the TIF discussion, I'm thinking, I don't know about you guys, I know I said this last time, I'd love to maybe the second meeting in February for the selectmen, maybe have some type of a presentation to them that we could discuss it, get on their agenda and say, hey, this is where we're at, this is what we're thinking, kind of thing. Does that timeline work for everybody?
Yes.
Mostly I'm saying, Rob, does that timeline work for you? Because
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
going to dump it
definitely.
on you, my friend, because
Nope.
you're my resident expert. So,
No, that works fine.
you know, because again, to me, it really sounds like a no-brainer as a tool. Does it fit everything? No, absolutely not. Will everybody get? No, absolutely not. But it's definitely something, a tool we need in the box to compete against these other towns.
Well, the great thing about the TIF is you do not have to guarantee it until you hear the project. You know,
Right.
but if you say we're willing to enter into it, all of a sudden it puts you on a level playing field with our competitors. That's all we want, right?
Exactly.
And-
Especially if like Paul was talking about that EMC property, Dell property, you know, I'd like to get something over there if we can.
Yep.
So, all right. So that was it for anything else. Public comment, Sam, anything? Since you're the only one here, Sam? Nope. Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Nice. Moved by Chris, motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
That one I heard Suzanne first, so seconded by Suzanne. All in favor, roll call. Rob,
Aye.
Julie,
Yeah.
Chris,
Yes.
and Suzanne. Actually, before we do that, we did not set a next date, so I'm thinking, I guess we can figure out what happens after the 15th at the selectmen's meeting and go from there.
Yeah. Hey, Claire, are you still here? Do you know what date the first planning board meeting, which is potentially going to have the public comment is?
Julie, do you mean in January?
Yeah.
It's the 11th.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I'm expecting we're not going to meet again before the end of the year. Is that right?
Probably not.
Okay.
Right.
So
You know,
should we-
I may post one for the 15th just in case anybody besides, in case we have a
Yeah,
quorum.
that's probably
Just to be
smart.
safe, I'd rather have it posted and not have a quorum than have a quorum and not have it posted.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But no, yeah, I think that's totally fine by me. But maybe we should try to meet. I don't know if there's a, really need to, but at least as a placeholder before the planning board public meeting.
Yeah, so why don't we do just like the week before, like the Friday before their meeting, that Friday morning? Does that work? I don't have my calendar in front of me, so I don't know what that date is.
January 8th.
Yeah, so why don't we schedule one for the 8th, the morning of January 8th? Is that okay? Or would you rather have an evening?
Morning's fine.
Mornings. Yeah.
Morning would work better for me as well. Suzanne's like, I'm not sure. This looks kind of full in here.
I have a dentist appointment at 10 in the city.
That sounds important.
I can't, it's such a pain to change it.
No, absolutely, I understand.
But
So
if everybody else can do it, don't go ahead without me. It's fine.
Why don't we plan on that date and we'll reach out to Michael and
You can
If
call
we
into us from the car on the drive-in.
I can.
it should be no
Only 5 minutes into the city.
biting your lips on the way back. All right. So yeah, we'll tentatively schedule it for the morning of the 8th, and then if we need to change it, go from there. Sound like a plan?
Happy holidays,
Does.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all so much, and have a great holiday, everybody, and stay
Merry
safe.
Christmas.
And
Happy
enjoy.
Hanukkah, Julie.
Thank you.
Are the kids everywhere that has kids? Are your kids bouncing off the walls? I miss that.
I mean, bouncing off the walls, but just like, I don't know, they're all just crazy right now.
We've been
anyway.
bouncing for 9 months. So.
I'm so sorry.
Like
I can't
that.
even imagine.
Now.
So, all right. Well, everybody,
What about-
thank you so much. We have a unanimous thing to adjourn. And again,
Excellent.
everybody, great job. And thank you so much for all you do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye
Take
bye.
care,
Bye, guys.